All right. Welcome, everybody, to the May 17th, 2023 meeting of the Police and Fire Commission. I'll call the meeting to order, and then our second item on the agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance. Could all rise?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under
God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you very much. It's on our agenda a little further down, but welcome, Donald, as our new member of the PFC, and we've got an agenda item for that. But agenda item number 3 is approval of the minutes. So in the pre-read packet that's been online, we've got minutes from our last meeting on April 19th. Any comments or thoughts on the draft minutes? Any motions?
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes from the April 19th. Fire Commission.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes as proposed, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right. Agenda item 4, public appearances for non-agenda items. Agenda item, okay. Nothing online either, so we are set to move to item number 5, International Firefighters Day, May 4th. May 4th is International Firefighters Day. On this date, we remember past firefighters who have died while serving their communities, and very much want to thank Fitchburg Fire and everyone in the service on the fire side who takes care of us every day. I had the pleasure of seeing some of our firefighters in the parking lot of a grocery store in Fitchburg the other day, so happy to thank them and just so appreciative of everything that you all do. Any other thoughts on agenda item number 5 or any other comments? Okay. Agenda item number 6, we also have National Police Week that is going on this week, and which we're in the midst of. So similar to fire, thank you, Chief, and to all the police service for everything that they do for our community and across the state as well. We honor, respect, and remember those who have given their lives to protect and serve, as well as those who continue to keep our community safe.
Thank you.
Okay. And then agenda item number 7, we're excited to have a new commissioner with us, and Commissioner Donald Dantzler. Donald, do you want to just maybe share a little bit about yourself and interest in police and fire and service to the city of Fitchburg?
Sure. Greetings, everyone, from Bangor, Maine. Sorry I couldn't be with you all in person this evening. I had a prearranged work meeting that took me out of town, but I do plan to be there with you all in the future. Again, thank you for the welcome and the addition to being on this commission. Donald Dantzler. My background is in education. More recently, I've just transitioned into the nonprofit sector, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to get involved with the Police and Fire Commission is just a lot of the work I've been doing through the community has largely been in Madison. And we've had, through the 100 Black Men Initiative, we've had several instances where we've been wanting to work with the police, specifically just getting the relations between the police department and the community, kind of ease those relationships and make things better in that sense. And I saw this opportunity and was wanted to get involved in the community where I live specifically. So definitely wanted to bring some of that wisdom and insight to this community and serve with you all. So looking forward to doing that.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome. Looking forward to having you. All right, agenda item number 8, report from Police Department. Chief, we'll start out with the staffing report if you'd like. Oh, sorry.
Back to 7, we just have the election of the PFC president, vice president.
Yes.
So we do that every year. We'll have this election. So this is where you can nominate someone to be the president and vice president of the commission.
I will nominate Tom O'Day for president.
And one comment on that. So my experience has been, and Sarah, I'd be interested in your observations and anyone else's observations. My experience has been there are 5 of us, 5-year terms. So each year there's a most senior person who's usually in their last term of the commission. My experience was that was the person who was in the role of president or chair, whatever it is, of the commission. And then the second most tenured person was in the position of vice chair or vice president. We've had a fair amount of turnover on our commission in the last 2 years even. So we don't have that kind of level of tiering of experience that, year by year experience that I think the commission has had in the past just because of all the changes most recently. So that's something to keep in mind as we move through this election process, is that it's a little different this time. So background, I guess.
So who would be that senior most and second senior most right now?
I believe Sheena might be.
Tom is senior.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I started before,
Yeah.
and just shortly though, not much longer before you did.
No. It goes fast, right? And to stay current and to stay updated in one meeting a month, and there's always more. I feel like there's always more to do. So,
Yep. And a little bit about the roles too, for anyone who might be interested. Sheena and I, we can always get together as 2 of us, and that's not a quorum. So Sheena and I get together with Sarah just to talk about what the agenda might look like. And then Sarah sends an email around asking if there are agenda items, and the chiefs obviously input for the agenda. And then that's really the role that I think outside of the meetings that.
running the meetings. And if he's not available, then I would be in charge of running the meeting.
Right.
Sarah
And your
gives a
term
great-
is up first, so your term is up in 24 and your term is up in 25, so this is FYI.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm happy to move out of this role if someone else wants it. Yeah, it's not a problem, and I think that'd be good if someone wants it too. So.
I think you're doing a great job.
I would agree.
I think
I think so too. In the interest of continuity, do we just re-elect the same slate we have currently? I would think would make the most sense given the changes Tom alluded to. So that would be, I guess I would need to make the motion to nominate Sheena.
I think I'm all aboard for that. I think getting everybody, and hopefully we all stick around for a while and we can kind of get in a good flow. And so
you're up in 24, Sheena, which is next year. So
next year, this
April of 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Other thoughts or nominations or discussion?
Well,
Second?
I'm going to assume you were thinking about maybe we should reverse the position,
Right.
but Sheena nominated you, so I'm going to take that to mean she doesn't really want to be president.
I think you're doing a great job.
You are.
I think, and I hear your timeline as far as the transition of it. I don't see a significant difference between vice president and president in this role. I am very happy continuing at vice president for the next year.
Keep us on task. You do a great job.
You do a very good job.
Facilitating meeting. So
I used
you're up
to,
for another year.
in other meetings that I've been part of, I put actual time limits on. We've not had to go that far.
Right.
But
No, it's been good. You're a great leader in that role, and I would love to continue learning from you for another year.
then you can do it for the next 5 years.
So we just need a second then. So Amble nominated O'Day, and we'll need a second.
A second.
And then Baxter nominated Amble for VP.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Okay. Then why don't we start with the position of vice chair, and then you can maybe do the vote for the position of chair. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay, so all those in favor of Sheena Amble as the position of vice chair or vice president of the Police and Fire Commission, raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Any abstained? All right? And then I'll turn it over, Sheena, then to you.
And then I'd like to make a motion that we keep Commissioner O'Day as president of the Police and Fire Commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
Okay, I did not say that, I assumed. I should have said,
Oh,
right?
I think it's okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, sounds
Congratulations.
good. Yes, congratulations.
Just for, hey, real quick, Tom, just for rule purposes, is it customary to not like vote for yourself in this committee? Just, is that why you abstain?
That's why I abstained, yeah. That's what I was thinking. I don't know if it's customary, but yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, anything else for agenda item number 7, or Sarah, anything technically we need other?
We're all set.
All right, sounds good. All right, then moving to report from Police Department, Chief, and the staffing report.
Okay, we swore in 2 new officers. One was a lateral transfer, and one was had completed the academy, which is very important. They're in field training as of the day that they started. Those officers, I can mention their names now: John Pierre Contreras, who comes over from Waukesha, and Matthew Lukey, who had just completed his police academy prior to seeking employment, and we were able to obtain him over a number of processes that he was in. We're happy to have both. Both of them are excited and are showing a lot of promise. In addition, we have 2 that we're going to be offering a position of employment tomorrow to start the academy in June. So that leaves us currently with the 2 new hires at down 8 positions. Out of a total sworn of 55, we're down to 46. 8 of those positions are in the patrol position, and 1 is in the sergeant position. We'll be talking about the sergeant position in the upcoming future. The 2 new officers are on field training, so they're not open for a staffing count, and that leaves us with 10 unfilled positions currently. We have 1 sergeant on FMLA from May to June, and we have 1 officer that is currently on limited duty for child, how do you say that? What can I say publicly?
I wouldn't say the name.
Okay, not leave, but no, unlimited duty. They're working, but for family reasons?
Yes.
So say for family reasons, they're limited duty. And then we have another officer who is on FMLA for child rearing purposes. We currently have 5 eligible for retirement. 1 is currently indicated they're retiring sometime this summer, and 1 probably at the end of the summer out of that. So that, even with the 2 hires, by the time we get the 2 off of field training, we'll still be somewhere between the 8 and 10 vacancies. Let's see what else I can offer. The hiring processes are still open, and we're looking to continue this process. Just to give you an idea on this piece, which you'll be hearing more when we speak for council on recruiting and retention, we do have some things that we're going to try out for recruitment and retention. That'll be coming up in the council sometime between July and August. There is a substantial amount of salary savings for these openings, and we're looking at funneling that back to give that back to the employees sworn as civilian who have stuck around during some of these tough times. When I get to the overtime report, you'll understand why we're happy to have them. The energy is still good. I'm very happy to say that the willingness to come into work and backfill is noticeable. I'm happy with the way the staff is working together on all 3 shifts and doing their part. So even though we're down, we're maintaining. And I say that so much as to it's easy to run them, wear them out. and overwork them. Right now, we're holding on, but we're coming into the summer. So I say that with caution. We're doing really well, but it's easy to burn people out at the pace that we're going. So just wanted to mention that piece. And it takes, from hiring somebody who does not have any prior law enforcement experience, it takes about 2 years before those individuals are able to comfortably work on their own. And in Fitchburg, in Dane County, outside of the Madison and Dane County sheriffs, most of them are working one person. So
Chief, when you're bringing people from laterals, how long? So you said 2 years for a non-experience. How long is it for a lateral, would you say, to get comfortable here?
Well, the lateral transfer will have to go through a field training process, and that can take as little as 2 months to 5 months, depending on how they transition to the report writing and the policies that we have here. And many departments are going to have somewhat different in policies, the way we write reports, what we want in our reports. If you're coming in Dane County, it's a little easier to catch on. If you're coming from another county, things are done a little differently. So you have to acclimate to that. Then it's the 1 year probationary period after that. So you're talking about a minimum of a year and 3 months to a year and 6 months for one that's a lateral transfer. But if that's somebody new, you're going to probably go through the entire 3 months of probation, 5 months of academy, 1 year, 3 months of field training, 3 to 6 months of field training, 5 months of academy before that, and then the probation period after that. I've always say this is somewhat of a thing that you tell new people. So you laugh at it, but we say don't buy a car, don't buy a home,
right,
until you're off probation. Because anything can happen. But it takes a lot of work to transition a police officer from the time we hire, from the time we go through the start of the process to hire, to the academy, field training, probationary period. It's about a 2 year process. So 8 vacancies started at 11. It's going to take about 2 years, and it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of stress on the field training officers as well.
Is the person matched with the same field training officer their whole time, or it's rotated?
They're rotated.
How often? And at what?
They're rotated during periods of approximately 6 weeks.
Okay.
And we will change them. They will also work different shifts.
Okay.
First, second, and third. And based on their ratings, we'll determine if we're taking them off sooner than later. The laterals that we have had recently have been able to transition pretty easy. So that's a good thing. We're picking some good laterals.
So while we're on the topic of retention, Sarah, would you mind just summarizing? We've got a recruitment referral bonus now that the council has passed and put in place. So would you mind just summarizing that for all of us?
Yeah, so we implemented an employee referral bonus program. So basically anyone internally and that's any city employee that refers a police officer gets a bonus. So it's $3,000 for entry level, $5,000 for lateral. We've had 2 brand new officers referred already thanks to the referral bonus program. So those were 2 officers that just started 2 weeks ago. So and they both already had the academy, one's a true lateral. So we're gonna hopefully see that take off even more. We have interviews. We have about 20 interviews in June 1st. So we're already trying to stack up and get ready for the fall academy.
And then, like Chief was saying, the cost of an officer leaving, or any employee, but an officer in particular, because of the academy requirements and the training requirements, is significant to the city.
Yes.
Which is, a couple of meetings ago, we just generally started talking about retention strategies because there's so much value in cost avoidance by retaining our employees. And obviously they're all employees that we want to retain. And like Chief said, now that we're down and we've been down 10 FTE people, we've got savings in the police budget that would make sense to push back toward those employees who are picking up all this overtime that they've had to pick up. So from a retention standpoint, that to me is tied to the mental health and wellness of the individuals who are there. And although we don't allocate funds or resources as a police and fire commission, I think that is important to the mental health of the people who take care of us in our public safety functions. So
And the great news is the mayor's behind a retention bonus program. So there was a proposal that went through and she approved it. And so they drafted into a policy procedure that still needs to go through council approval. But there is going to be an associate bonus for each police employee in the department, even the civilian staff. So
Great.
And along with the retention strategy, it is still a strategy not to offer recruitment dollars, right?
No, I prefer that, and I've been involved. I've recently elected onto the state Wisconsin Chiefs Board, and I am a member of the Wisconsin Police Executive Board, which is for the mid-sized cities. And in both, we talk about recruiter retention. The one thing, and there's long debate, but I am and several are of the opinion that we do not offer the hiring bonus. Some are going to continue to do that, and some are going to double down and increase the amounts. But it's just you're stealing from Peter to pay Paul, and what we like and this type of organization, I would say fire would probably agree, is you want a team atmosphere. And you're breeding individualism by offering these signing bonuses where people are like the ones that left our police department to go somewhere else. It was strictly financial. And to go from one place to another just for the money, what is going to happen when there's issues, or you may go encounter those issues there. And that's why I've seen it. I spoke to chiefs outside of the state, one from an area outside of Seattle. They had 25% vacancy, and they filled that vacancy in 1 year. But the city leadership, elected officials, and all supported the department. And they weren't the highest paying, but they beat out several other cities in the recruiting and retention simply because of the support in that city. I had some discussions with the mayor. I'm very happy at the support she's providing us and explaining that she's going to try to, see what we can do to support. And part of that isn't necessarily financial. It's the acknowledgement that we are challenged in the law enforcement profession.
We're definitely in a hiring crisis as well as with fire, as we talked about. And so having this bonus, I 100% agree, and I'm glad we're on this path to reward our people that are showing up every day that are here. I 100% agree with the fact that can create animosity bringing in people. So I'm excited. I think it's great, and I love that everybody's on board, and I think we just keep going up, and that's fantastic. So
one thing I will mention in the hires that we've had within the last year, the supervision and the management have all reported back that they're doing some phenomenal work out in the streets. So that's very good to hear.
One more question about the retirees. Do they need to give a notice? And if so, like a notice of a date of retiring, or are they, like they would say in the fire department, I'm 2 days away from retiring. Any day could be my last day. Do they give a notice? Do they have to schedule a notice?
What is it?
they're supposed to give at least a 2-week notice,
Okay, but that's it.
Typically, though, people are giving much greater notice. I mean,
Okay.
I would say on average, it's probably a month, even more than that in a lot of cases. So.
We've been given, I think, notice for retires, the ones that are leaving after 25 years. They're giving us 3-4 months notice.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's great.
But I think to answer your question, I don't think they have to give us anything.
No.
Employee handbook requests that they give a 2-week notice, but it's not a requirement, but they really should.
You're not going to get the retirement taken away.
We have
Right. No, okay, that's good to know.
It does help from a planning perspective.
Yes, 100%.
All right, Chief, anything else on the staffing reports? Or, sorry, 8A?
Oh, sorry.
Any comments on the overtime? We've got pages 8 and 9, I think, of the packet. The overtime reports, which are helpful, still significant. I mean, just under 1,000 hours in 1 month of overtime has been worked. And that's, like we talked about a couple of meetings ago, that's half of a full-time equivalent position, which is a function of just, of course, the less bodies we have in the service.
I will mention, you have the overtime report for you to review, but I'm going to mention some pieces that Finance and I are going over. There was a significant spike for the month of April in our overtime. And that's a good indicator on what you're probably going to see in June, July, and August. But one of the biggest pieces that we'll be able to show when we speak with finance on our spike in overtime is we invested a lot of time on backgrounds. If you recall, in the last 2-3 months when we were doing recruiting, we've gone through several, I would say probably a dozen backgrounds at least. Easily a dozen backgrounds where people have failed. We thought we were ready to hire. And what is new to the city of Fitchburg, we had 3 and probably 6 months, I would say, that failed the psychological.
It doesn't really happen.
Do we have a new testing facility? New tester?
But he's seen that at a number of municipalities, so it's not just Fitchburg.
Interesting.
Right. So that takes a lot of time in background. We're investing in background, and that it's expensive when we talk about the extra money. You're traveling, you're sending detectives, sergeants, and sometimes police officers that are doing backgrounds to other cities, other states to do the background, to do the interviews. Yes. So when you see that overtime spike, it's not just in the normal day-to-day pieces. We talk about backfilling for the vacancies, but the overtime on backgrounds and the overtime on field training. The officers that are field training these officers. So the field training officers, and I just went for a walk with one of them right before this meeting, is the stress that you put on that field training officer to train officer after officer after officer as we're continuing this process of filling the vacancies. So it takes you away from doing just general policing. We're just basically getting our staff in order. You have the FMLA pieces. Life goes on within our families. You have limited duty status on some. The limited duty is for good reasons, so that's exciting. And you have training. We cannot stop training, the level of accountability in law enforcement. So we're filling for a number of reasons, but the show must go on. And that's where you saw the spike for April, and I will say that's going to continue throughout the summer.
Everything's opening back up and things are filling back up again. Quick question with detectives and the background checks. I know, or I thought I recalled when we hired chief, it was outside agencies we had used for a background. Was that just because it was the police chief?
It was the police chief, yeah.
So that we do it in-house for the line officers, okay. And is that something that we've ever outsourced for the line officers as far as background checks?
Well, I will tell you this. Funny you say that. It's a possibility to do that, but again, the other departments are doing the same. One of the officers that we hired was doing on the side backgrounds for other departments.
Okay.
So the other departments are trying to find people because they're short.
Right.
So.
And then we're asking more and more of our people.
Right.
So I just didn't know if that was something that was common practice or not. So, okay. Thank you.
I want to make sure I understand the overtime report. Commissioner O'Day mentioned it's half of an FTE, but this report's for April only,
Yes.
right? So
Yes, sir.
almost 1,000 hours of overtime just in the month of April.
Yes, sir.
And 1,000 hours would be approximately half of an FTE for the year.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're not talking about just April.
Right.
How many FTEs to cover that just for April, I think is the more impactful number. Half of that would be what? That's almost 10. That's year 9.
Right.
Wow.
So one other thing that I noticed in the April overtime report, there's now on page 8, there's a line item for municipal court. And then right underneath that is a line item for shift coverage. Is that shift coverage for our officers to kind of be there in municipal court, or is that line item of shift coverage not tied to municipal court?
Yeah, the shift coverage is not tied to municipal
Okay.
court.
Gotcha. Because in March, shift coverage was 151 hours, and in April, shift coverage was 226 hours, and that stuck out as one of the bigger
Right.
line items.
Right.
But is that filling for current positions that were, is that shift coverage for people who are scheduled and then for whatever reason can't make that shift?
For the vacancies? No. Let me say, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so for those hours of shift coverage and the different types of, different shift coverage, is that covering the 8 positions that were down, or is that covering people who, for whatever reason, have to call out of a shift?
It's going to be shift coverage for both. As I stated, there's some FMLA challenges as well as also on the sergeant level. So that's filling for both. I forgot to mention that we're also coming into the summer. Our minimum staffing levels are 4 per shift. On third shift, we're going to have to switch some things around. We're going to be going to 3 officers per shift for the third shift.
Forever, or is that just a temporary?
Due to vacancies. Moving forward. And what we're going to try to do is stop after licensed premises, so sometime after 2 or 3 o'clock, and then leave that vacancy after there to bring it down to 3.
Is there an impact in the overtime numbers, the mental health transport situations?
That impacts us, and in April, I think we may average 1 every other week. We had 3 that month.
And that's 2 officers that are then taken out. Pretty much out of
Taken
pocket.
out. You're talking about 13 hours on average to do a transport to Winnebago for mental health detention.
Is that new?
No, that's that's been a long discussion topic for law enforcement. That goes in the chief's meeting on trying to work a way where we're not spending that much time.
Will the new center at, right at Vermont there, is that opening up for, I know that's a mental health facility, is that something that we would be using?
I don't think that's one we're using. I have not heard that. But I will tell you, to bring it back, we do have a part-time social worker who has been helping us out big time on that piece to reduce the number of transports that we've had to do out to Winnebago.
Any consideration for a transport service? I think I've heard there's some agencies that use.
Yeah, I haven't, the lieutenant that we spoke about has not given me a report on the cost benefit for that.
Yeah.
So I don't have the answer.
Other thoughts or questions on the staffing report?
Chief, are there certain barriers that you see yourself running into?
I'm sorry, you're just coming across very loud, so we're gonna bring the volume down.
Oh,
That's an R.
I'm sorry.
We don't have our microphones anymore.
This is brand new.
Fancy.
Yeah, go ahead, Donald.
What's up there?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, in terms of recruiting, are there specific barriers or challenges that you think you're running into in terms of recruiting new officers?
I would answer, and I would also ask for Sarah to help in answering that. There's a lot of things we can do, but it also requires a lot of staffing resources that we're short, and money. We can do things through social media. We can travel. I know some cities, and I would agree to this, but again, the challenge, I think our recruiting piece is stick within the state. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We should probably look in out of state. I would like to look in the southern states, simply because the benefits in the Midwest are much better than benefits in the South. Just historically from where I came from, the hiring spike in the 90s, many of the staff came from some of the southern states, as far south as Florida, Texas, some from Colorado, and we had a large contingency, believe it or not, from Michigan. But going out of state, and it was all because of the benefits that Wisconsin offers, and you have the WRS. But again, it's going to cost staffing to get somebody out there. It's going to cost money, And we've thought about it, we talked about it. It's where are you gonna get that from to do it?
We had a meeting with the PFC maybe about 6 months ago where we did a brainstorm of recruitment retention strategies for police officers. So Donald, I'll send you that video so you can watch that PFC, and there's minutes too. But we had a nice long list of potential ideas of how we can recruit more officers, and we talked about job fairs. We talked about a number of methods and different things. So I'll send that your way.
The mind, sir, just circulating it to all of us, or just letting us know which one is just really fresh. I think a big part of it is what we do in the community to support police and fire, and frankly, the way the community talks about police and fire and public safety matters a whole hell of a lot. I mean, it's not Fitchburg specific in my mind. It's industry specific and profession specific, not specific. It's the profession itself of police, and I think less to extent to fire. But yeah, I think just talking positively and all the accolades that we're going to hear about fire tonight, or police tonight, and that fire does in their annual event, are something to promote.
And that's exactly what was discussed in our chiefs meeting last week. Is we can promote our own organization, but I think we need to promote the law enforcement image. And sometimes we're trying to do it ourselves, but that's not our purview, right? We're cops. Maybe look at hiring an agency, the Wisconsin Chiefs Organization, hiring an agency that's going to promote the law enforcement image to help in recruiting. I think is going to be important.
We just need a full-time recruiter and a full-time detective to do background checks. And right, all the problems will be solved. I think you're doing a great job creating a culture that people want to be a part of. So incentivizing the people that are here, acknowledging the mental health of the overtime, like we see it, it's here. We're hoping to get through it. I think you guys are laying the foundation to hopefully grow, and once the tides kind of turn and hopefully people want to be a part of this profession as they did, 10, 15 years ago.
Well said.
Yeah, and I would just add specific to Fitchburg, that we continue to be out in the community, having the community events, people come out and begin to put a name with a face, which is kind of, again, hopefully to break the stigma that many folks have in the community about police. Because once you come out here and interact, you find, hey, these guys and gals, they're just like me, right? They're people just like me. So,
Some more ice cream at the chocolate shop. Tell all the officers. We hope to see them there.
All right. So let's move to item 8B, authorization to post police sergeant open and competitive process.
So we just had a police sergeant position posted internally for about 2 weeks, and we only had one candidate apply. We don't feel comfortable going through a hiring process with just one, but we'd still like to keep that person under consideration. So we'd like to, for the first time in a really long time, open up the police sergeant open and competitive and allow for external candidates to apply, and then we'll have an interview process with the internal and anyone external that meets qualification.
Am I right that the process is governed by the collective bargaining agreement?
No.
Okay, so it's a policy of Fitchburg to only post internal.
It's been a good past practice, because it encourages growth within the department, and it's pretty standard among a number of police departments, I believe, to promote from within or post internally first. But sometimes you just don't get the internal candidates to apply, then you're kind of stuck having to go open competitive.
Any thoughts, Chief, on the position?
Yes, it's the sergeant position is one, and we had a long discussion, was it a month ago or 2 months ago, on the responsibility, and I think the responsibility we put on it, which is extremely important, may push some people away from wanting that. It's the frontline officer, which is empowered, but at the same time it comes with a lot of decision making. So we had one. I want to encourage that piece. There's going to be other openings for promotion within the department with the turnover, and without mentioning too much, I think the group that wants to apply for promotion want to apply for the other spot. And that's why we saw one person apply for the sergeant. And what we're going to try to do, I prefer to promote within, but if there's no competitive process to compare, we have to open it outside. And I want to do the outside piece as the last resort. I think this is the last resort, and open it to see what applicants we can find from outside departments.
And we've struggled with this since I've been here as far as sergeants and applicants,
We might
right?
get
It
a
hasn't,
handful or so that apply, but it's never a large amount of
Right.
applicants.
Is that a problem? Strikes me as a problem. Why would you not want to move up? You know what I mean? If you've got how many just officers, 40-ish?
Right.
And of that pool, only one wants to advance in the career? To me, that would be a red flag.
I'm not disagreeing with you, because I've been here a year and a half, and we all know what the internal complaints rate were, right? Opportunity for upward movement, opportunity for variety, and I think we've given them that.
But Chief, you talked about in the past the challenge of the there's lieutenant type of responsibilities that come with that job, and there's line response. I mean, you're a sergeant, you may be patrolling. There are days you're going to be acting somewhat like a lieutenant. I mean, it's a big responsibility.
It's huge.
wearing many hats,
Wearing
multiple
many
hats.
hats.
And you're available more so, right? You gotta look at your lifestyle and their needs, and I
Right.
think they see it, right? They see it, and they know we're short-staffed, and they know what they can give, and that may not be, I would say it's not right now, but I think if we keep growing this foundation and from the top up, hopefully people will see that doesn't deplete them so much as we've seen in the past, I think, because we've had multiple people back out of the sergeant position. And
Right.
that's
And
a red flag.
lieutenant, yeah.
And the lieutenant, right? So we've got to get these people in the place to support those roles and take it off of each other.
And that's going to be my argument as well. As you go up the ranks here in Fitchburg, the responsibility is great and the amount of work that you put into it. Well, you mentioned it, you've been here long enough to see people take demotions because of the work and interfering with personal and family. And from the sergeant to that lieutenant position, which is my argument, as we grow in our organization, we have to split those positions and bring in others, which has been my argument in our organizational chart, to do that. Otherwise, we're burning out our staff. And if people are not inclined to take that promotion, knowing, okay, it's not only added responsibility, but more time at work, more time work, doing some of this work from home and then coming to work and doing that work and interfering with my personal time,
Right.
I probably shouldn't take it.
It's a hard sell.
Yes.
It's a third shift position too, so
Okay. So
third shift
even-
sergeant.
Yeah.
You've asked for another sergeant position, is what your intent is, right? To take the relief off that level of the organizational chart.
Correct. We got one, so we have 24-hour sergeant in positions. We're vacant one, but 3 per shift allows us to have 24/7 supervision at the sergeant rank. But there's no sergeant for the detective rank, which that's coming in the future. I'm going to be asking for that. In addition to that, you got the lieutenant, which is the shift lieutenant that can handle the administrative work at nights to keep our sergeants out on the street. That will relieve the sergeants. Ideally, in an organization, there's some basic needs, a foundation. And in that foundation for a law enforcement mid-sized city, not law enforcement organization in mid-sized city, you want to have 3 shift lieutenants, you want to have 3 sergeants per shift, and then in the support level, you want to have at least 1 sergeant for your detective bureau, and then your captains that oversee those 2 areas. The support with your detective bureau, your communications, your tactical, those are all support side. You have 2 captains that oversee command of that, and then the lieutenants that see the shift-to-shift activities on a daily basis, and the sergeants to actually be out in the street supervising the officers. That's the basic foundation.
And you've
We're not
shared
there
this,
yet.
you've got a great visual. I don't know if everybody's seen it, but I think it's something that we should keep, right? Keep seeing it, keeps like, so there's hope, and so people know that this is the goal, this is the plan, and you're going and you're meeting and talking about this to the powers that be.
Right,
And-
Well, and I bring up the red flag only as another indicator to the policymakers that there is challenges and issues.
Right.
When our own staff doesn't want to advance in the department, that should be an indicator, a red flag indicator to me. As someone who hires a lot of people, why can't we get more of our own
Exactly.
to want to move up? And it's for all the reasons you just said. So thank you.
So Sarah, do we need a motion and vote on the authorization?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll move to approve an authorization to post police sergeant positions, open and competitive.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
Where will we be posting this? When we say post it, do we have a,
Yeah, there's law enforcement specific sites, so WileyNet would be one, for example. We can check with police, there's police one, there's.
And they go
law
nationally?
enforcement. Yeah, these are large websites that reach a broad audience. But WileyNet is Wisconsin specific.
do you reach out to any of the former police chief applicants?
Good.
One candidate is this individual aware that we're going to go external?
So I believe police has already met with that
Okay.
candidate that applied internally.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So, yep. And that person will still be in the mix.
Correct.
Any other discussion? Okay, so the motion is to approve the authorization. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We've touched on 8C already, retention strategies. Sarah is kind enough to circulate our discussion from a couple of meetings ago or months ago. So I think that's probably a continuing thing. And then the chief, and they've got proposals that are moving through the city council process. So that's the next kind of step for some of those.
Chief,
All right.
is there anything in place for summer? Because summer is going to be very busy. I mean, I know they have their mandatory mental health day, right? Do we still have that?
Yes.
That's good. Is it once a month? Is that?
I think it's
Once
just
a year.
Once a year?
Yes.
Right, I mean, I'm with you and I see it. It's going to be a busy summer for both departments. And kind of looking ahead and seeing if there's something that we can do internally to identify that. Just keep it on the radar. I know you do, so.
All right, Chief, anything else from the report from the police department?
No, sir.
All right. You have an event tonight over in City Council Chambers, so obviously if you need to duck out for that, do you just want to mention what that is now, and then we can mention it in the announcements again?
Yes, twice a year, we have a recognition ceremony for our sworn and civilian staff, and to include any community member that had that assisted the organization in an event. So we're recognizing those people from officers to civilian, anniversary dates on the 5, 10, 15, 20-year markers. And we have one resident, one community member that assisted in a missing persons investigation. So we'll be mentioning that person as well, all just to during Police Week, which is going to be pretty important that we recognize those officers and the people in the community that have helped the law enforcement profession.
Good deal.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
And Chief Pulvermacher, you've got something similar that you do on an annual basis in fall, October, I believe?
October.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Thank you, Chief Morales.
Let you loose and let you
Yeah,
go get ready for
thank
that.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your assistance, your patience with me, and we'll move forward.
Great, thank you.
All right, agenda item number 9, report from the fire department. Chief Pulvermacher.
Yeah, so we'll start out with the newsletter that was circulated. One of the things that we worked with is the format. of the newsletter. It identifies different areas of responsibility depending on our command staff that are responsible for things like operations, personnel, and prevention inspection. We do have a hot topic right now that's going on through the city, which is why prairie restoration and the burning topic was brought up. And I also mentioned the fact that we had a significant amount of FMLA requests over the last couple of months. It has impacted our overtime. That in conjunction with reduction in recruitment from a paid-on-call, paid-on-premises standpoint. And we are also in the process of onboarding some interns. So we've had an extensive amount of overtime that we've experienced over the past couple of months. And it has impacted the exhaustion level of our firefighters. It's peaked, and we're trying to address that with staffing and so forth. So you get an idea of what the calls for service are. Once again, that format hasn't changed. We moved the splatter map up to address the calls and where we're seeing the calls, the types of calls that we are going on, all represented by that map. Prevention and inspection, we formatted that a little bit differently, but ultimately bringing on the division chief of prevention and inspection, we've been able to address our inspections. You can see in April, the number of inspections that we conducted went up significantly versus the first 3 months. And not that much different from what we've done year to year, but because of the fact that we were onboarding a brand new division chief and wanted to make sure that we were doing it in a way that made sense to him and his processes, it was important to hold off on that, not to mention the fact that we were onboarding a new record management system. I sort of gave you a little bit of a snapshot as far as another area of expertise that this division chief brings, and that is investigation. One of the things that I am responsible for is anytime we have damage over $500 as a result of a fire, we need to address an investigation, a cause and origin. That could be a simple, very simple investigation because it's obvious, or it could be something that's a little bit more elaborate that involves a team. By bringing Mark on board, we're also becoming more acclimated with the mutual aid investigative unit, that being Mayfit. It's through Dane County, and not only does that allow us to utilize our own internal resources, but brings external resources into the fold. And then we also supplement other municipalities with our investigator. But it provides a better coverage of the overall responsibility. So it's another area where the fire service has expressed innovation. So when you see people at the state level address different incentives for state aspects of the budget in the way of innovation, just know that the fire department has typically been involved in innovative practices from a mutual aid standpoint. We share resources, we try to regionalize our response depending on specialty, and then this is just another example of where we're seeing that. The personnel list does not reflect the interns that we will be onboarding. It has addressed a number of other different things, but from a staffing perspective, we're still seeing the overall number of paid-on-call, paid-on-premises firefighters. Although we're authorized a head count of 45, right now we're at 26. We have not had an issue filling our career spots. Our recruitment issues are separate, different than what we see in the police department. The fire department's recruitment issue is the fact that we don't have positions. We would be able to fill those positions if we had them.
If they're full-time positions.
If they're full-time positions. I mean, one of the things you got to appreciate, and I apologize if this is something that you hear over and over from me, but I think it's worth repeating, is the fact that our paid-on-call, paid-on-premises firefighters typically have full-time jobs elsewhere. And so I can't mandate them. I can't order them to be in. I can highly request, I can suggest that we need their participation at greater levels. But the minute that I start mandating them in and it takes away from their full-time employment, I'm likely to lose them. So where the lion's share of the work happens when it comes to mandate and overtime, that's our career staff. So it makes sense to be able to share that workload by bringing more career staff onto the department, and we're working on that. A staffing report is being developed along with studies that have been commissioned by the city. So hopefully we'll see here in a matter of a month or two some third-party, non-biased impressions of where our staffing is. They'll be able to identify the problem. They're not going to help us with the solution initially. That's going to come with additional investigations, and ultimately it'll verify where we're coming from and what we've been talking about for a very long time.
Chief, just to clarify so everybody understands, because I think some people don't, the practice of the combination department, the paid-on-call, paid-on-premise cannot replace a career firefighter's shift and cannot cover their shift. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. So we do have minimum staffing for our career firefighters that have to maintain a certain number of hours, certain number of shifts, and those are not something that a paid-on-call firefighter will be able to replace. There are certain times when paid-on-call, paid-on-premises do supplement our career workforce if they're off, sick, or whatever. But there is minimum staffing requirements for our career staff. And as we bring more career staff on board, that is adjusted.
Mm-hmm. So it's not, I think some people may see it as you have all these people and these people, but it's not that simple as, it's not a...
No, from a combination standpoint, no, it's not simple at all because it's not a one-for-one.
Right. No, thank you. I think that's important for people to know.
And it gives you, yeah,
Sorry, you mentioned that we're there at a breaking point.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So studies and tests and all that are great, but they take time, and we're in a crisis today. So what can be done, or who can be responsible for making those changes now so that we can relieve some of that breaking point stress on the career staff?
Yeah, so part of that is what we address through our policymakers, those that are ultimately responsible for the budget. It's the meeting that I just came from, right? Trying to identify some of the solutions that we can put out there right now. A lot of it's financially driven. And so I'd love to be able to say that we should put this many people on, and I have. The ability to fund it is a completely different situation. Now, as we learn more about what the state's going to be able to provide, we may have a little bit more latitude as far as what happens toward the end of the year, but it's based on the commitment from the state and what's coming to the city in the way of things like shared revenue.
But also prioritization within the bubble of monies we have now.
Yep.
We might get more, the bubble might expand, but.
Actually our local budgets have sort of been set up to fit because of the fact that a growing municipality doesn't necessarily get to, its services don't grow at the same rate. So as a result, things like levy limits, things like expenditure restraint, all have an impact on what we're able to do locally with municipal budgets. And I think some of that is going to be changing here in the short term. The level at which it has changed has yet to be determined. So what that means is there are other things that we are looking at as a city, and one of them is referendum, to be able to circumvent, and I shouldn't say circumvent, it is part of the process, One of the issues that we have at the state level right now is some say that as long as referendums are working, our process is working. I'm from a different aspect where I know that if we're using referendum to address budget, we're already addressing things after the fact. So it's hard to get in front of something when you're going to referendum because referendum takes a long time. And then once we address referendum, we're addressing a situation that existed maybe a year ago. And now we've got new things that we need to consider. So trying to get in front of it is very difficult. Not impossible, but very difficult.
So there's no emergency measures that can be taken, it's just that slow grind, and that's it.
From a contingency standpoint, that is a discussion that I can't speak to on an educated level. I can tell you that from a finance budget, we are trying to address all options.
Well, a few pages later in your report, you talk about overtime.
Yep.
1,400 hours last month.
Yeah.
Okay, we're looking for money. There it is.
Yep.
Right? And it's not going to slow down. So why is it so hard to just convert that overtime to more career positions? I'm not following that.
Well, right now, some of that overtime is based on people that were off on FMLA. So it's positions that we already have. Some of it is based on the paid on call, paid on premises, and the reduction in the number of people that we have available. So there are certain areas where we're trying to address the transfer of funds from one area of the budget to others. Overtime at this point is not one of them. Because of the fact that right now we're over budget in overtime, so that money's coming from someplace else. One thing that is interesting to note is although we're at 88% of our overtime budget, 1/3 into the year, our overall personnel budget is 33% right now, meaning we are taking that money from elsewhere. What isn't accurately identified right now is we're about to get into our summer months, which overtime is going to pick up. So we need to utilize that overtime figure to identify exactly how our firefighters are impacted and the fact that it's weighing heavily on their health and well-being and their work-life balance. And at some point, we're going to lose firefighters if we work them too much. They'll go elsewhere where they don't have to put in as much time. So I'm not naive to the fact that we have an over-reliance right now on our career staff.
Two short-term not solutions. It's a short-term solution, but we're asking for your approval to start a continuous recruitment for POXs. If we can even hire a handful more of those, then they can help offset the overtime that our career firefighters are going to have to work. Plus, we just passed last week a holiday work premium. So in the past, if a paid-on-call firefighter worked on a holiday, they didn't get holiday pay. So they just got their straight hourly rate. Well, now they're eligible for holiday pay, which is at a half-time premium. So they're going to get time and a half for working on a holiday. So that will help a little bit.
It'll help. It won't eliminate the overall need. The other thing with the continuous recruitment, what we're trying to do is exhaust all options, right? So before we can say that we just need to go to career, we need to prove, what proof of concept is, we can open up this recruitment. The chances of us getting a lot of paid on call, paid on premises through that open recruitment is not very high. We'll get some, but they're still going to need to be trained, right? So they're not going to be able to be counted as staffing right away. What we will be able to do is involve them in our process and hopefully retain them to the point where we can train them. And there's other potential candidates that may come from other departments that don't require as much training. It's a little bit more sticky in the sense that it is very individually dependent on the capability and talent of the candidate. We can't assume too much. At the end of the day, we don't want our candidates to come in and talent to be affected. There's one thing that I've heard over and over again is talent still needs to be the primary driver of recruitment, and not so much recruitment, but hiring.
Yeah, you don't want to lower your standards and the type of people you hire.
Yeah.
Just to fill positions.
No, you don't want a warm seat. You want somebody who's able to do the job.
That's right.
Go ahead, Donald.
I was just going to ask, can you hear me? I'm sorry, am I echoing?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Just really loud, so
Okay.
keep playing with the volume on our end.
You're good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me turn, would it help if I turn down? Is that better?
You're good.
You're good.
Okay. I was just going to ask Chief, what does enrollment look like through Madison College?
So we do a pretty good job with getting in front of our intern candidates. We take advantage of the next gen process that has with our intern candidates. So we are able to address that level of recruitment. And then our paid on call, paid on premises firefighters, they typically have their firefighter 1, firefighter 2 already. So they've been through some technical college institution. A lot of them come from Madison College. What we try to do is we have a number of firefighters that are associated with and I apologize, I'm looking at this camera and realizing that it's probably a number of different cameras.
No worries.
The other thing that we are well aware of is the fact that, where was I going? The talent associated with those that we are hiring still require recruit training. So we bring them on and we run them through the paces to make sure that they know the city of Fitchburg variables. But from a recruitment standpoint, we're trying to get in front of it. We do have a number of that's where I was going. We have a number of firefighters that are instructors out at Madison College. So I've asked them to keep an eye out for those that have the strongest potential to succeed in our environment and who put the most amount of effort into their education. And we've been pretty successful with that.
Because we had like 3 or 4 come into Fitchburg that were at graduation on Friday, right?
Yeah, we had 4 of our candidates who graduated from Madison College. They were already on staff. So by the time they finish their internship, they already have their associate degree. They have their EMT, their firefighter certifications, and they're recruitable just about anywhere. And that's one of the problems I have, is without available career positions, we typically lose the qualified candidates to other departments. We're the AA farm team.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we'll continue to utilize Madison College as best we can. Going on through the report, the org chart I just provided for some clarification, and that has actually already changed. That'll look a little bit differently on the next report. Just to try to paint the picture a little bit more closely as far as what we have internally. The overtime breakdown gives you an idea that yes, our overtime is up dramatically, and it has a lot to do with what we are seeing with those that are off right now. It's unprecedented. We've never had 4 or 5 people off on FMLA before. And we have one that's going to be off for a very long time. And so we'll be contending with it. There are adjustments that are being made to the budget as a result of it. The one that's going to be off for a while is going to likely be on long-term disability. So that person's that person's salary, that portion of the salary, can be utilized for our overtime. I try to stop short of addressing a solution to our problem by saying that it's funded, knowing full well that there's a human element to this that can be overworked, and if we overwork them to the point where they feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, we will lose them. Just trying to be realistic. So,
Well, Chief, if you drew a trend line on here, I mean, the 23 numbers are just,
yep.
the data suggests that next month is going to be higher than last month. To your point you just made about overworking people, it looks,
Yeah.
We're at the
June will be
breaking point.
higher.
Yeah, right, yeah.
July will be higher. It's just a trend in emergency services. The nicer weather, the call volume significantly increase.
but staff is carrying the fatigue from working the previous month into the summer.
So one thing that I took off of the report, because it seemed a little self-serving, and I don't want people to think that I'm trying to pat myself on the back for the amount of hours that I'm putting on. I did take my overtime hours off of this, or the amount of time that I'm putting in. I'm still putting in 120 to 130 hour pay periods.
Yeah.
Right?
That was supposed to go lower.
It's supposed
I thought that's why it wasn't on here, is because it was non-existent. No.
Sorry. But here's the value behind that. And I can tell you that where I came from in Milwaukee County, all career, you don't see fire chiefs putting in that amount of time. It does help me in the sense that I'm feeling the pain a little bit too. I can keep my nose to the grindstone, knowing full well that that's what our firefighters are experiencing. It would put. I don't want to be the type of person that puts in 40 hours a week while my firefighters are putting in more. But it is significant, and it's exhausting. It can be frustrating, this is all predictable. It's all predictable activity, knowing that the community is growing. Finally, we're getting some traction in the sense that it's escalated to the level that it has.
I would like to see the chiefs overtime, all of you on here.
Yeah.
I think that's something you should continue sharing, because that is a big piece of the puzzle, and your mental health is just as important as theirs, and your hours worked is just as important as theirs too.
So I can share that with you.
I know it's not self-serving. It is the facts that be, and I think that's important to know for all of the policymakers, and so all of the chiefs. Because I'm assuming the other two chiefs aren't on here,
They're not.
right? And not as a comparison. Not if you want to generalize the chiefs and put it in one category, chief administration.
Sure.
That's fine too. But I think we can do the math ourselves and figure out that it's more than 40 hours a week for 3 people.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share.
Okay.
I just, like I said, a lot of what's on the overtime breakdown is based on the organization and not the individual.
Right.
And so that just.
So maybe just an admin or chief option. Everyone notices.
So yes, and it was important for you to see the trend line. That's why that graph on the bottom. So a lot of that was added with input from our firefighters. One of the things that I asked for is input into the newsletter, so that we're not only reporting on things that we wanted to put out, but also things that they wanted to see and maybe that they wanted to inform our elected officials, our community, and our police and fire commission about. So that was added based on the request of our firefighters.
And they can show their families why they're so tired.
But yeah, well,
That's right. I mean, that is.
So I have some very personal experiences with work-life balance that we won't share here, but it absolutely has an effect on how our families are perceiving the fire department. Another thing that was added, our paid-on-call firefighters wanted their overtime to be reflected as well, so that's
Great.
Personnel, we recognizing birthdays and anniversaries, and then to the point of where on the last page identifies those firefighters that graduated at the MATC commencement. That's always fun to watch. Seriously, it's nice to see our firefighters taking their education to the next level. But that's the overall report. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Donald, do you have did I see your hand go up? Sorry.
No, I didn't say anything.
I didn't want to jump on you. Okay, so one question, Chief, on the org chart.
Okay.
Reconcile it for me, because I see a career lieutenant B shift red, I see an A shift lieutenant red, and I see a C shift lieutenant position red. All three career positions as vacant.
Yes.
But on your chart, a couple pages up, they're not showing as vacant. Are those the FMLA leaves you're talking about?
So let me share with you the history of those positions. When I started on the fire department, I was told that I had 3 career lieutenants that we could promote. The second year into me being on as fire chief, we started that process. It was halted based on funding. Was stipulated that the funding didn't exist for those positions. We did find money in the budget for it. That money was put into the overall general fund and was utilized in the city based on necessity, but was not used to fund those positions. So there is still a vacancy that exists with our lieutenant positions, even though it's not identified as an available staffed position on our the staffing spreadsheet, because at this point they're not approved until the city allows me to hire or to promote. So my first line leadership is affected.
Well, I agree, but I guess it's a little misleading depending on who's reading the report. I would perceive that as being, let's go hire 3 lieutenants. You've got vacancies at both stations, right? But if you're saying, well, they're not authorized, that's a different conversation, right?
So they were authorized, and right now they're not funded. So there are positions that need to be filled that are not funded. I have to get them funded.
So it's not in the budget.
It's not in the budget.
And that's been how many years?
5 now.
Right. So us as a board, we advocate for the community. Is there anything that community members can do to help support you and get you the resources? I mean,
so one of the things that you'll see from me is in the operational budget, I'm going to be requesting personnel, and it will reflect every year I've asked for the lieutenants. There's times when it was actually incorporated in the budget, and there's times that it wasn't. But I'll ask for them again. I had a previous administrator ask me why I keep putting in for positions that the council keeps saying no to, and my answer to that is the need hasn't gone away. I get it. There's funding issues across the board, but the need hasn't gone away. So if I stop asking, it's suggesting that I never needed them to begin with. So I'll keep asking.
How do we reconcile those reports, though? Does anyone else feel the same way? Do we need to have a unfunded column on your staffing report?
So,
you're telling me they're authorized, but here I only see 3 career lieutenants under the authorized head count. So it either needs to be 6 with 3 unfunded, or it needs to be 3 and you change your org chart to remove those vacancies. One of the two, but to me right now it's kind of telling 2 different stories.
So one of the things that I did with the new organizational chart is I have those positions actually in the background but covered by the firefighter career that's on. See how there's 2 firefighter career spots underneath them? Well, one of those has moved up over that position to indicate that that's who's filling that position right now, that I still have 6 people per shift per station. The trouble with an organizational chart is all the nuances associated with staffing that are hard to depict, and that was actually it was changed with the next variation. So hopefully that'll answer some of your questions. But
I didn't follow that, Chief. So if we're looking at the staffing report document,
it says 3, right?
you've got, for career staff, there are 3 lieutenants authorized head count. But then for part-time staff, there are 3 lieutenants authorized head count,
Yep,
of which none are filled.
correct.
So is that part-time staff lieutenants row, is that these 3 positions that the council said we're not going to fund?
No.
Oh.
The issue with the paid on call, paid on premises lieutenants is they typically don't stay around long enough to have enough longevity and experience to be I got to be careful with the terminology, to be frontline leadership.
So are the 3 unauthorized head count, or sorry, 3 authorized head count that aren't funded on this sheet?
Yeah, let me see if I can bring up.
They're just shown as firefighters.
Yeah. 0. Do we have them?
Are you looking for the report?
No,
Here, I can give this.
I would love to be able to hear.
Here's my.
Yeah, let me share the organizational chart with you, Sarah, and then you can maybe bring it up.
And I think this also speaks that they need an acting officer in this position, right? You have a staff, you have the Station 2 B shift, they need an officer. So these career firefighters are coming up, essentially acting as an officer. They're being paid differential pay or overtime?
So let me share with you yes, they are getting paid an acting pay, but let me share with you the internal comparable. Chief Morales talked about sergeants, which are the equivalent to our lieutenant. In order to fund, or in order to run his department, he's saying he needs 9 sergeants. I've got 3, right? And I need at least 6 in order to do what we're doing. And I've explained that based on how your typical fire department runs. You can go to Madison and see how they run their department. Each station, each engine, each ladder has a company officer and firefighters underneath them. I'm not doing anything novel. I'm not doing anything that isn't typically associated with fire department organization. But the funding mechanism isn't there. I got to stop talking so I can send Sarah this.
So I can't bring it up on the Zoom because I'm not.
Would this make
So
more
we can
sense
send
if
it
there
out.
was like an asterisk that said waiting for funding? Or, right, like how do we, because I see what the chief's saying, he's saying this is where we need to be, but where you're saying, I see that, but this is where we are, why do we have this?
So I will send this to Sarah just so that it can be distributed to the group, but this is what I was talking about. So this is how I addressed that.
Oh, on the org chart.
Yeah, see right here how I'm trying to cover up those positions? Because I don't have them funded right now. They need to be funded. They're not funded. So it takes away these firefighters, it addresses my career staff, and in these areas where I have the boxes, that's typically where our paid on call, paid on premises, or intern firefighters staff. So,
I gotcha.
yeah. I apologize.
Sorry, we'll send you this via email. So apologies, we can't
So
bring this up right
covering
now.
up what he was talking about and then utilizing that. So I apologize.
But by utilizing those career firefighters, I mean, that's driving a lot of, I would imagine, if you're overtime, I mean, if they're having to move up to leadership roles, like at the lieutenant level, then
So
it's creating vacancy. I mean, it's creating,
It's a trickle-down effect.
It's a trickle down. Right.
Yeah.
But Joe, you weren't given the 3 lieutenants because you added a deputy chief, right? This year with Raccoon's.
So there was that. We were close to having the lieutenants funded, and what was suggested is that we bring on another full-time chief. Now, I was also, we've also been asking for that for a while, so what I did is I struck while the iron was hot. The fact that we were authorized a full-time position, which did cost more than the promotions, we took advantage of that. But the promotion still, the need for the promotion still exists.
Well, I don't need to belabor it, but I think for me, it would be helpful to stop calling them vacant if they're not available. Vacant to me sounds like we can hire for that position. If that's not possible, then that box needs to stay like unfunded or not available, something in addition to vacant.
Yeah.
Because it's still vacant, but we don't have the authority or the ability to fill it. That would be more meaningful to me, and then your covering up is an issue too, but I don't know how that
I
plays
think
out.
that's a great idea too, because this isn't just seen by us, this is seen by the community. So if you put unfunded, I mean, that would speak to me, that's saying that there's,
I'll address that.
right? I think that's a great recommendation. Good catch.
I also wanted to provide visual depiction of how things are actually operating.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the
No, this is
reports.
great.
Yeah, the report's really helpful, and so we had, a lot of firefighters at our meeting last time, which was great to hear from them individually. We appreciate you incorporating their inputs into the staffing report for sure.
It's an internal and an external document, right? So it's a method of communication, and it's one way that I can get information out to everybody who's requesting. And the suggestions for the newsletter content are not limited to the fire department. So if there's something you guys want to see, it's really a matter of just reaching out.
Sure. All right, well, let's go to agenda item 9B, authorization to begin continuous paid on-call recruitment.
Yeah, the idea here is just to take advantage. Typically, it happens about once a year where we close our paid on call, paid on premises application, and somebody comes up to us who just moved in from out of town and wants to be associated with the fire department, and then we have no option for them until the next year. So then what they end up doing maybe is they go to another department, become affiliated, and then start running with that department. If we're lucky, they come back to us. If they are happy where they're at, we never see them again. So by keeping the application open, we're at least allowing us to be able to bring them on, start getting them associated with the department, issue them some gear, have them start participating in our monthly training, and then when we do run a recruitment academy, to incorporate them in there. We still need to make sure that they have the ability to maintain a certain set of standards. So our minimum skills, they need to be on top of that. And that will all be incorporated into how we ultimately count them for staffing. But to get them on board, to get them associated with the department, and then to onboard them appropriately just makes a whole lot of sense to take advantage of interest.
You could always come to us for individual authorizations though, right?
Yes, and we would
but
still.
This would make it more efficient, allowing you to do so continuously like you're
Yeah, so it's sort of like what the police department is doing right now with their police officers, is then when that application comes in, we would accept the application, we would go through the process of an interview and do what we typically do, and still come to you for approval.
I think that's fantastic. I think that's a great idea. I think we've seen it work well with the police department. I think that's one, we're limiting ourselves with the, single annually and opening it up, like you said, so we don't lose that person and we just have that option available. Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve that we begin the authorization of a continuous POX recruitment process for the fire department.
Second.
Sarah, is this something you recommend and support too?
Absolutely. I think it's very needed, and I'm excited to see how many people might apply and get hired from it to help with the overtime that our career firefighters are putting in.
We know of one person already that wants to apply for the department.
Let's go.
Any other discussion?
The only comment I'll make is that I don't want us to continue to use, I'm 100% behind what you're going for, but I also don't want us to continue to rely on that paid on call aspect of your department to plug some of these holes. I don't think that's the right direction overall. And so let it be known, at least from my perspective, that we'll support.
Thank you to Fact TV for catching that. So we're back. I think we have a motion and a second to authorize a continuous paid on call recruitment process. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right, thanks, Chief, for the thoughts on those. And now we're moving to agenda item 9C, discussion and action on the requirement of CPAT certification for new career firefighters. Just quick background, something we've talked about at past meetings. At our last meeting, we had a really good, lengthy discussion with a lot of data and input from individuals outside the city, from the IAAF, which was helpful, and thank you to them for coming, and then to individuals from across the state and the Firefighters Union and our own individual firefighters as well, which was great to have. So we had a long discussion last month. We asked at the time, I think my recollection is for Chief and Sarah to come back with a recommendation of how we can incorporate some of the things that we discussed, and that's where we're at.
All right, so did have a meeting with Sarah, and one of the things that was brought up is the fact that there needs to be some predictability in the process. So if somebody has interest in becoming a career firefighter, how do they know what to do? How do they know to get in front of some of the things that we are requesting? So one of the first things you have in your packet is one of the things, something that we will offer on our website. This will be likely a PDF. So preparing to be a firefighter, identifying what the minimum requirements are, and then for our career firefighter preferences, what is all entailed. The other thing that we added to that is, what happens if they read through this and they're missing qualifications? Well, what do they do about it? Well, we're providing them with a means of getting in contact with the fire department so we can assign somebody to them to help walk them through that process and get them associated with the programs and the training that is required of that position. The other thing that Sarah and I talked about was, what does it mean for the CPAT? And from a career aspect, we didn't want to limit somebody from being able to apply because they don't have a CPAT, but we still wanted to make it a part of employment. So the CPAT certification, we would be able to address some of the variables associated with appropriately applying a candidate physical ability test. What we heard is that the preparation for that test needs to be about 8 weeks. So because of the fact that this will be up year-round, we'll be able to help people navigate what that looks like. We'll also be able to provide some recommendations as far as what pre-planning a CPAT looks like so that they can better prepare themselves for a successful outcome. Ultimately, it would be also hooking them up with an assessment facility. The thing that I want to be able to provide is CPAT in the department. That's going to be a goal that I have for the short term. And by short term, I'm hoping within the next 2 years, we'll be able to have that equipment in-house. We don't right now, so we're reliant on other organizations, and we have reached out to Madison College to see if it's something that ultimately Madison College would be interested in providing. What I'm also looking at is maybe even splitting the cost between Madison College and us. So that it can be available in the city of Fitchburg, but it's still something that Madison College can use, so that we're not reliant on their facilities, and they're not reliant on finding something that they have to build up. So it would hopefully be a win-win, but those are negotiations that have to happen. Ultimately, if we have to fund it all, there's grants that we can participate in, and we're looking into trying to address that. But until that point, we are reliant on outside organizations to provide the assessment, to which we can point the candidate in the right direction. Much like every other assessment that we have pre-employment, they are responsible for getting it. The good news is this: typically our career firefighter candidates, because of the fact that they are required to have a driver's license, a valid Wisconsin driver's license, they have the ability to get to a test. We don't necessarily want to default to the point where the City of Fitchburg Fire Department is providing that transportation. But ultimately, we would have that candidates, if somebody had either a financial issue that they couldn't get the test, or they had transportation issues, we would have them meet with HR to determine if there's additional assistance we could provide to get them to a testing facility. But that would come through HR based on other things that we provide to other departments and other employees. So it's something to consider as far as not creating a roadblock unnecessarily to a qualified candidate. We also know this, in many situations, the top qualified candidates are coming with the CPAT already because other departments are requiring it.
So for this first page, preparing to be a firefighter, that CPAT is listed under preferences. It's still a minimum requirement though, right? Just not at the time you apply.
Correct.
So I found that a little confusing. It's something to think about, is whether there's a way to distinguish it as part of a minimum requirements, but make clear that, and you've already got it in parentheses, that it's not required until
Time of
conditional
employment.
offer goes out,
Yep.
or after the conditional offer goes out.
Yeah, and there too, it's a matter of when somebody applies to make sure that they have the minimum requirements, and then to reach out if they don't.
Oh, yeah, so maybe it's minimum requirements for application or something
Correct.
like that. Gotcha, okay.
Chief, who would be, I'm thinking, I'm seeing this, and I'm looking at your overtime. Who are your department recruiters? Who is that? Who's taking the time to connect with this person that's calling, and whose job is that?
Yep, so typically we're going to have them talk to either Rob Kunze, Chad Grossen. Both of them are command staff employees. It doesn't necessarily impact overtime. If it's an intern candidate, we have them working with Jesus Villagomez. He has been instrumental in making connections, and because of the fact that he at one time was an intern, he can speak to the process and speak to the value of becoming a member. So we try to handle it at the appropriate level, and typically it doesn't impact our overtime.
Is there any incentives? I mean, right, they're wearing another hat again. Is there any incentives or anything for them taking these recruits, and is there?
You know, the incentive isn't necessarily financial. It's having direct impact on the quality employee that we're hiring. And there is extreme ownership in placing the right candidates within our department. So there's value to participating, and most you could consider all of our firefighters recruiters.
Right, and that is the best recruiters, right? But the time it takes to genuinely go and connect and guide and mentor somebody to do this. One quick recommendation, I thought, I want Fitchburg Fire to help. I want them to reach out to Fitchburg Fire. But if Fitchburg Fire doesn't get back to them, I also think having Madison College on here would be another great tool and resource. So if for some reason this person's not getting back, can they connect with Madison College? Because Madison College can continue that growth. I don't know.
So I won't put that on here because I'm trying to recruit them to the Fitchburg Fire Department. We will utilize Madison College, and we'll put them in contact with them. And matter of fact, a lot of times, if they don't have the qualification, we will sponsor them into Madison College programs. But I don't want them to circumvent our department, because if they go to Madison College, there's other instructors there that work for other municipalities.
Okay.
And then, you know, they can do their own work.
Yeah.
I want to bring them in here.
Okay. I just think of my 19-year-old self when I wanted to be a firefighter, and I said, you know what, I'm going to call Madison College. And I talked to Dawn Way, and I said, I think I want to be a firefighter. She said, come on down here. I will show you the way. Mm-hmm. And then I get to pick, you know, and then they live here. So that was the thing, too, is residency. It's having the people live.
And we don't have residency.
Right.
And a lot of our paid-on-call, paid-on-premises are coming from outside of our municipality.
Okay.
So once
that's changed significantly, yeah.
The people that come to Fitchburg know that they are getting the exposure that they need in order to take this to the next level. And then we typically lose them because they become qualified.
What about Sarah? What about having Sarah on here or HR, right? If they don't feel comfortable talking to initially reaching out, or maybe you guys are busy or something, I just would like another option for them, even if it's HR, to kind of continue and match
And I
up.
realize HR might not know some of the answers to these questions, but then at least we can follow back up with fire and ensure.
That's fine, I can put HR on there. What I was trying to do is put them in contact with somebody that could sign them up for a ride-along right away, to get them in the station, to have that conversation, that exposure with firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they're interested, to me, suggests that they're gonna wanna talk to us, not Sarah.
Figure it out. Right, no, I agree.
And
I
mean,
just
I
know
don't have
how
a
busy
problem.
you guys, and I just know how busy you guys are. I know how busy you are, but having another option, if we're not here, I don't know how responsive. I would assume responsive because we need people, but it's just a suggestion, but this is fine. I mean, right, this is good.
It's a step in trying to create a welcoming environment, to let people know that even though they're not currently a member, there's nothing preventing them from coming in. And if we put the right recruiter on it, which is why we typically identify some people that are better at outreach than others,
Right.
And do our best to create the best possible impression when they first come through the door. But typically, that's how we get that's how we solidify interest, is when they finally come to us and have a ride along.
No, this is good.
So then it goes on to the next portion of that, which then gets into the process itself. So the application, the interview, the fact that then they're offered a conditional offer. Once they're given a conditional offer, if they don't already have the CPAT, which is the thing that we were initially talking about that drove a lot of this, is the fact that then we identify how they get that CPAT, what are the resources available, to include the medical evaluation in the background. So that is why we wanted to hesitate on who we offer transportation and all of that stuff to, because for the other elements of our hiring process, we don't take them to their medical, physical, and those types of things.
Is there not a psychological?
There isn't, not right now. Something that we're bringing up at the Wisconsin State Fire Chiefs Association at our conference in June. We do have a psychologist that is going to speak about pre-employment psychological evaluations. But right now we don't.
Is it, we don't, and is it an industry practice, but we don't practice it, or it's not common among fire departments?
It's municipality dependent.
Yeah.
So typically when you're hiring career people, it's part of it. When you're hiring, and that's the nuance that we have a combination department. Part of our staff is full-time and career, part of it is paid on premises. So it's something that we need to consider because of the psychological impact of the profession, but we don't right now.
Just like Chief said here, they fail it, right? And you're under high stress, and that's what these psychological tests really bring out and try and figure out is, are you able to handle stress, the hours? What is your response in those situations? Does the military do something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Do they?
Yeah, that is part of it.
Yeah. So
And we've talked a lot about mental health today, and so everyone has mental health. It's just a matter of evaluating whether it's good or bad,
or how they handle it.
and how they handle it. And so if you hire someone who already has some mental health, or dare say mental illness, and then you put them into the job, and
But
then
they pass the CPAT.
yeah, they pass the CPAT, and then it gets exasperated, much like COVID has done, and just unveiling all of the mental health issues in our lives.
So I don't have a problem adding a psychological component. There's a cost associated with it, right? Like with everything.
Yeah.
I would, especially if we're hiring them as a career employee, I don't have a problem with the psychological assessment. It's not part of our process right now. And if it's something we want to add, we could make it part of the medical/psychological evaluation. But I would have to come back because I haven't evaluated that too much. Do you know how much one of the psychologicals costs?
$475.
So from a career aspect, that's not a lot of money.
Yeah,
Doesn't happen.
and towards the end of the process.
So last.
Well, maybe something you can think about if you want to recommend it.
Yep.
You know, bring it back maybe next time with,
Since it's not agenda, yeah, but yeah, we can put that on the next agenda.
So we can't make a motion without it being agended.
I can bring it back next time.
Donald, you're kind of jumping in on a hot topic as far as the CPAT. Do you have any questions, or are you familiar with what we're talking about? I just want to make sure you're going to be a big decision maker once this comes about if we do vote on it. So do you have any questions?
No, that's just the physical ability test, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm good for now.
Okay.
So then that goes into the corrections that were made to the hiring policy. This is another thing that Sarah and I discussed and came to agreement on. There's a couple of things that were changed independent of the CPAT. If you look at the paid on call, paid on premises, I moved the scheduled ride along and the meeting with the chief up before we met with you, just so that once we made the recommendation to police and fire, we could move forward with the conditional offer. Instead of them sitting down with me and then me having adverse recommendation. The other thing is with our paid on call, paid on premises, and with our interns, what we will do is make sure that CPAT is made available to them. So if they do go on to become a career firefighter, they will already have it. And so our internal candidates will be provided with the best possible chance of success going through our hiring process.
and right now, there's no requirement for CPAT for paid on call and interns.
No, so that's the other thing. So when we talk about people who have limited credential, that's one of the reasons they come into our paid on call, paid on premises program, because we build those credentials. So we give them the best possible chance to then make it a career based on the fact that they've had the exposure, they now have some experience and the education required to take it to the next level.
So it's preferred but not required, like the career firefighters. So the CPAT will just be preferred. We'll train them while they're here, help them get to the CPAT.
And I think that's a common practice, right? With always before paid on call was the thing, it was volunteers. You would go and volunteer at your local fire department and they would build you up to the point of career readiness. And so that's essentially what we're doing now, just with our paid on call. So.
Yep, and the same applies to interns. So some of the similar changes were made to the hiring policy with the interns, and it sort of reflects what we're doing with paid on call, paid on premises. The other thing that will be added to this policy is the open recruitment that we just talked about tonight. It hasn't been added to the policy yet. You can see that with paid on call, paid on premises, I still put dates associated with that, or months, I should say. So that's going to reflect open enrollment instead of actual dates.
And interns, our intern vacancies, how many interns are we allowed?
We're allowed 6. We hire 3 a year. This year we hired 4 because we had an additional vacancy.
So we don't have trouble filling the intern spot. Just same. So intern spot is solid. Career spot is obviously it's just the
Career
pay.
solid, it's
yeah.
So it's one of the things that I talked to, speaking to Mr. Densler's comment about Madison College.
Right.
That's one that we try to get in front of.
Right.
We try to be one of the first intern programs to post our applications. We try to have our firefighters at the Next Gen program taking a look at those candidates that will likely represent our department well and our community well, and try to have some discussions in advance of the process.
I think I saw Camp Hero is starting their
They're coming back, yeah.
process. So hopefully we can see some Fitchburg firefighters there.
Any other thoughts or questions about the CPAT requirement?
The last thing with the promotional or the hiring policy, that's where I started talking about CPAT and when it is requested. So we'll have the requirement posted year-round, so anybody interested in our process will know that CPAT is a requirement. In addition to that, when they apply for the position, we're going to post something on the application, so when they push submit, they'll see that, okay, CPAT is a requirement. If I don't have it yet, I need to start reaching out. So it extends their ability to get that test, because once we provide a conditional offer, we're going to give them up to a month after that to have a positive, they're going to successfully pass that test. So we're trying to give them as much time as possible, as well as reaching out to the fire department for preparation.
I just want to say I'm in full support of the CPAT now that it's at the time of, coming on and starting employment instead of at the time of application. And I feel like we have a really good, strong process. And I feel like the education piece is really helpful too. You're letting people know where they need to go for the CPAT and providing resources. So I feel much more comfortable being able to support that CPAT. And I appreciate the opportunity to sit down with y'all and talk about process. So.
That's good to hear. Thank you. I think this was, like I said, a really hot topic, so it's good to hear that everybody's we found a common ground.
And then I actually went on to define what the CPAT actually is in the hiring policy. At the end of the day, if I'm honest, what I tried to present to not only the Police and Fire Commission, but with Sarah's help, so I'm not presenting anything that is outside of what we see within our profession. It's, once again, not a novel concept. It's something that all of the kids going through Next Gen, through the certification process, those that are ultimately going on for career employment are well aware of coming into it. So whatever they can do to prep themselves, I like the idea that I hear that Madison College is at least interested in addressing a CPAT, and we will do what we can to advocate for it, but independent of that, I want to have it internally. I can use it as a recruitment tool as well. What I'm hoping to be able to do is those, and I say kids because of the fact that typically they're younger than me at this point, but the fact of the matter is I want to bring them in. I want to be able to give them an idea of what the assessment looks like in advance of taking the assessment, utilizing it as a way of going through firefighter type exercise stations and giving us the ability to reach out to the community and provide that influence in advance of actually going to Madison College to enroll. They'll have some exposure. We'll take advantage of the excitement and the interest, and we'll help them through the next steps. So I do see the CPAT as being a way of promoting that.
Okay.
So if I hear you right, Chief, you're saying you would like to move the CPAP requirement from application to
Time of
a conditional offer, but the requirement
Start
remains.
date, right?
employment. So it's
Prior to employment.
subject to conditional offer.
But it remains a requirement.
Exactly.
Career staff only.
Yes.
Yeah, this just feels like it's more fair, and it gives us an opportunity to see, I think, more candidates up front than weeding out candidates by having this at the beginning of, at the application process.
And that's ultimately the consensus that we came to when we discussed it.
So that sounds like you need a motion
Yes. Yep.
to do that. So I will make that motion that we move the requirement for the CPAT test to by employment. Is that the right way to say it, Sarah?
Exactly.
From
Application to
to
employment.
If I may offer, does somebody have to second it before I offer a friendly amendment?
Sure, I'll second it.
well, before I can make it, you can tell me what you want it to be.
And accept the changes made to the hiring policy.
Yes, that would, so my motion will be to move the CPAT requirement from the time of application to prior to employment and accept the chief's changes to the hiring and promotion process policy as he's presented them to us.
I'll second. Any other discussion?
I will say, though, that I would like to see us moving in the direction of that also requiring it of the paid-on-call folks. I realize it's more of a challenge for them, but they're shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the career staff. If it's important to career staff, it should be important to everybody going into that building if it's on fire. So if that's the case, then I would encourage the chief and whoever else needs to be part of it to find ways where we can make it not just preferred, but a part of that process if we remain a paid-on-call.
And I agree with that, especially if we offer the assessment internally.
And that could be the difference. Once it's here, then there's no excuse. We can have everybody go
Even
through that.
some form of it, I think that's my discussion would be the goal is having a healthy department. And I think that was my big thing is the CPAT doesn't necessarily mean you're a healthy department. You mean that you're able to be trained from the start, but having a continuation of something that allows the physical agility and their physical health to be continued over their career and not just at the time of applicant. So that is, I'll kind of keep tabs on that and just we can continue that discussion as far as even if it's a adjusted CPAT where it's not necessarily time, but they're going through and they're able to complete each one or something. But that's something that I hope we go for too, is again to keep that not even just kind of so everyone's in the same game. It won't be an even playing field because we're asking different standards for our two different positions. But as long as there's some accountability on the physical end on both, I think we're heading in the right direction for goals. So.
All right, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, sounds good. So we'll move on to agenda item 9D. This is a closed session. I think we've mentioned before that the Common Council passed a resolution maybe 2 or 3 months ago that said people can't participate in closed sessions but remotely. So I think we'll probably put you on pause in the room, and then when we move out of closed session, we'll have you join us again. Does that sound good?
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
All right, then I'll move to enter into closed session for the purpose pursuant to section 1985-1C. The commission will move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically to notice the commission of a resignation of 2 support staff and a paid-on-call firefighter.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? None? And moving into agenda item 9E, open session. Any action on the discussion from closed session? Okay. Then moving on to agenda item number 10, any announcements? No? All right, Donald, we're excited to have you. Congratulations on the appointment and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right, any other announcements? Okay.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Any discussion on adjournment? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? None? All right, sounds good. We're adjourned.